My name's Amanda. Welcome to my channel. This message is for those who find it, take what resonates, and leave the rest. I'm going to call it Death Star. And the message came through from the tarot really strongly. And the first card is the Death card. And many of you guys know that the Death card is actually a really exciting card to pull and signifies the death of what no longer serves, the death of parts of our old self. So we're going to dive in a little bit to death first. And resistance is a theme that started to come up for me personally 2 weeks ago and has been pretty steady for the last 2 weeks. And in that time, there's 4 other people, maybe 5, in my personal life who have used the word resistance in the last 2 weeks as far as identifying what is a strong force in their life. So if you're feeling general resistance to something, or just resistance and you don't know what it's from, it just kind of feels like not wanting to move forward, but it's not the real you, there's a part of you that doesn't want to move forward, then that's probably a collective force that you are noticing. So congratulations on picking up on that. So diving into death, death and rebirth are constant cycles, constant themes that happen over and over on the spiritual path. You've probably experienced many of these already, but there's another one that that's floating around right now. And so when we wake up and we realize that we are not just the body is where we live as a spirit temporarily in the one you're sitting in right now. But we wake up and we start to feel our soul, our spirit, who has different concerns and different impulses than the body. This is not an end in itself. This is a awakening to the fact that spirit is alive, soul is alive in the body, and the body can resist that. So when we go through yet another wave of noticing that, another wave of spirit energy coming through the body, it can feel like stress. Spirit energy can feel like stress when it comes through like a wave. And the body will resist that. And so the body might not even know what it's resisting, but change and energy and that spiritual energy that feels like stress at minimum, but it can feel like fear or terror at maximum, is part of what might be going on with resistance. And so we've tasted spiritual freedom in some way. We've tasted different waves of this, but when a new one comes, it's always jarring. It should be jarring because the old self has many layers that need to be put to sleep in perfect timing. And so in the past, we were kind of like thinking that we were just the body. We were just the blind slave of the body and its urges and impulses. And now there's kind of like the noticing that there are different forces. There are higher forces and lower forces, and they become really obvious and they can become really uncomfortable. And they don't all die at once. That's just not how it works, because we need to learn. We need to absorb information with each death that passes. And through a layer of a death cycle, our spiritual consciousness will eventually kind of mow down. It will dissolve. It will put to rest the resistance, but it doesn't happen immediately. And sometimes we feel our spirit really wanting to surrender. We feel our spirit trying so hard to let go, but the impulses of the body, the thousands, millions of years of biology that we are up against, it doesn't happen immediately for that body. And that body we should give thanks to. That ego we should give thanks to, because it's allowed us to survive and resist harm so many times in our past. But eventually the spirit does dissolve that resistance. So if you are still feeling that stuckness or that resistance with a wave of spirit that's awakening another part of you, don't worry, because just have a little bit of patience. Just have a little patience while the body and the ego catch up and realize that spirit is strong and will dissolve that resistance in its own time. In the death process, it doesn't mean that we've become apathetic. It doesn't mean that we are inactive or lifeless. On the contrary, we actually, even if we're not experiencing a lot of action or movement on the outside during a death process, we will often feel, even more than ever, joy or empathy or sorrow or some of our repressed feelings more than other times. And so a lot of the energy that would normally be going to outside actions is actually circulated on the inside while it's kind of resetting some of those difficult feelings, those difficult memories. It's putting things in order. And so in a death process, sometimes there is a little bit of a pause in some way in our life, and new things aren't always coming in hard and fast. And so just trust that that energy that's circulating is actually really doing a lot on your subtle body. It's rebalancing and clearing a lot of things that need to be dissolved. And so we can't expect that we're going to be in a huge, massive momentum in the outside world. And so we do feel things much more than we used to, maybe much more than other people that aren't going through a process like this. But we allow this to happen. And we know that everything that happens under the will of God, when spirit is moving in a big wave in our body, even if it feels like stress, it's happening for the best. And so, moving on, I'm just reading from Elizabeth Haysh's book, The Wisdom of the Tarot. Give me a moment here. She writes, "The man who until now was a mixture of spirit and person becomes more spiritual, might become more impersonal. The spirit is the exact reverse, the opposite of the personal, the opposite of the selfish. The person stands for isolation and egotism, and the spirit, however, destroys that egotism, draws man into unity, creates integration, and creates a selflessness." And so the person starts to disappear as far as the person's programming, the person's personal egotistical impulses, and the spiritual consciousness are fully alive. They've always been fully alive, but in the background. They've always been kind of blocked by the contraction of the body and the ego. And the death process is not usually an instant. Sometimes it can be. Sometimes in a death cycle, we can have very instantaneous ego death. But in general, if we are just kind of going through life and we're being open to this process, there can be a period of days or weeks or even months of kind of like a slow death of one part of us. And having patience for ourselves and knowing that we are not to blame if it's not going smoothly. And when this resistance of the body and the ego comes in response to this big wave of spirit, this is completely normal. And teacher Kat Courtney often talks about having appreciation and wonder and amazement at the ability of the body and the ego to resist. Again, because we're up against millions of years of biology, when we had to resist true threats, wild animals, warring tribes, invasions, we really needed the ego to know how to act and to push back to survive. But this energy from spirit that's bringing in change is not a bad change. And so this is just the primal ancient part of us that is resisting. So have patience. If you're experiencing a death process, don't expect too much in the outside world as far as you having a lot of momentum, having a lot of action, and allow the energy that has come that might be very uncomfortable to circulate within you. And if you need to, if you're somebody who's got a lot of energy in your upper chakras, in your mind, if you're somebody who's very overstimulated or overwhelmed very easily, during a death process, we can have a lot of activity up here, and it can cause stress and worry, even terror and fear. And so the best thing that we can do to kind of smooth this over as much as possible is to be grounded and to do physical things with our body, do things with your hands like cooking or deep cleaning, taking some time to walk in the sun, taking some time to be in nature. Really try and ground yourself so that the energy is not just hovering up here, but that it's hovering in the lower part, because then you're a clearer channel. Then the bottom parts are not blocked, and that energy can flow a lot better. And then Star is the other tarot card that came through really strongly this morning. And Star is a special card. Well, they're all special cards, but it's card number 17. And the number 17 is only divisible by the number 1. So it's kind of like a card that stands in isolation. And it's a reminder to allow any isolation that is necessary for as long as it needs. We sometimes really need less input from the outside world when we're going through a death process. And the star is here to support that and to confirm that if you're in a period of isolation of some sort, that it's not because you've done something wrong. It's not because of anything personal. It's because it's part of the process. And there's another thing about the star card. Elizabeth Hayes in her book writes, "The higher beings of creation descend from higher worlds, settle in man's open soul, just as butterflies flutter all the way down from the sky to the open flower and drink nectar from its cup. The butterfly denotes a close link with the higher worlds. Just as the angels of God descended to Jacob at the well in the desert, so man, when he has reached this high state, communicates in his innermost self with the beings of the higher worlds, with the spirits of God. Though he be ever so alone among ordinary men and feel like Jacob in the desert, he is nevertheless like Jacob at the fountain of the life source. He drinks from it and never feels alone. God is always with him." And part of the message that came through to me, a butterfly just flew outside my window, a white one. Part of the message that came through to me is that a lot of you feel some kind of connection with the angelic hierarchy, with beings of a celestial nature, even if you haven't seen them, even if you haven't dreamt and met them in your dreams or your meditation, even if you haven't had a mystical experience where you've actually, say, visualized them or heard them clairaudiently. People who have grown up and haven't had a lot of support, especially as a young child, in whatever way, there is kind of like a benevolence, there is a watchful eye that watches over these children. Even if terrible things happen that we don't fully understand as a child, there is some kind of a presence of angels that are around children that are not fully supported. Because when a child comes into this world, they're wide open. They're not, as you know, they're not fully formed. And they're very vulnerable to not just the actions of the people around them or the neglect of the people around them, but just energies in general. They can be targeted. They could be targets in some ways for lower astral beings, negative entities. And so there's a special place in the hearts of the angels. There's a special place in the for angels to support children. And even if these children have never seen or felt angels as a child or an adult, if you identify with that, you have a close link with the angels and the higher worlds. They've probably been around you, even if you cannot visualize them. And that's one reason why a lot of people who don't relate to anything I just said maybe don't believe in spirits and angels. But there is something kind of deep in our knowing, if that has been our difficult childhood experience, that the angelic hierarchy is real, even if we've never seen or heard or felt or anything like that when it comes to angels. There's just a knowing that we have their support in some way, even if we don't notice anything at all. She also writes, at this level of consciousness, a person has no other thought or desire other than to participate in the great work in the redemption of the world. For him, this is no sacrifice, no denial. It gives him great pleasure to see even those who were previously groping their way in darkness are following along and making progress. It gives him pleasure and satisfaction to learn that these others also already recognize what is essential in life and do not subordinate to the inessential. He watches them, free of anxiety, with deep faith, merging into the great whole, like tiny molecules becoming children of God, and thus, as Christ said, the salt of the earth. In the star energy, nothing remains except for what is true, what is reality, the soul, the innocent, curious soul who has good intentions. God can see your good intentions, even if nobody else can see them. Even if you're not able to bring into the physical world manifestations of, good service or good work while you are in a process like this, because God sees your heart. It's really important to remember that God sees your heart. Your heart is what matters. And she also writes, naked, completely unveiled, just as God created this person's soul, a living spirit in their true higher self. And so the death card comes before the star card in the sequence of the tarot. And they're not right beside each other, but the death card does come first. And so we always have to remember that in a death process, what's coming is going. What's coming is going. And so when we feel resistance, when we feel shame, when we feel like a big load of heaviness that maybe we've felt before, and we're like, oh, here it is again, like I'm just kind of in it. I feel like I'm in the underworld. That's not the end. Sometimes the death process is just really sticky, and the star is coming. and the star is coming. A human being at the level symbolized by Tarot card 17, the star, is like a shining star in a dark sky. Just as the planets shine in the night because they reflect the light of the sun, so man passes on this light that he receives from God, radiating love and light to anyone who comes in contact with him, shining like a star with his wisdom and deep faith in God. This person can never have low common thoughts or concern themselves with common obscene things, because the person is being purified, radiating purity. And one beautiful explanation of purity that I heard recently wasn't purity as though you never do anything wrong or you never make mistakes, but purity is, one way of looking at it is awareness. So the more awareness that we have of the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the comfortable, the uncomfortable, the more our awareness grows, this is purity, because this is truth. We're seeing the more the truth about our situations. We're seeing more truth about ourselves and how we are programmed, how are we letting go of those programs. And this awareness is more pure truth. So think of purity as higher awareness, more consciousness of what's going on around you and how things work and how they're connected to the whole. Yeah, what else? I think that's it about the star. Yeah, if you are feeling some kind of resistance, like your spirit wants to move forward, but your body is stuck, remember that the spirit is like wildfire. The spirit it always wants to move forward. The spirit always wants to experience dynamism. And yet the body it has been kind of like stuck on the same channel for thousands of years, more or less. It's very content with the program that has been set. It's very content with not changing. And so when our awakening comes in a new wave, the spirit gets very excited. The spirit can sometimes feel trapped in the body. There can be a lot of discomfort in the body because it's like there's all this energy buzzing around, but you might even feel wired and tired. Like you might have that wired energy going on, but it's really your body does not want to go and exercise, for example. And so that's really normal. That's the spirit moving. And so connect with your breath when that happens. And even if you don't have the physical energy to exercise, try and move the energy somehow if you want, whatever is unique to you that you feel called to do, like yoga or going for a walk or being in the sun. The sun is amazing because it has the ability to cleanse our aura, to kind of like burn off, just burn off anything that's kind of like sticky in our aura. So spend a little bit of time in the sun, and if you can. But to recognize the resistance and not to demonize it, and not to think that there's something wrong with you because you're feeling a lot of resistance in the body and the ego. It's not the real you. It's just the mind reacting to spiritual energy that's coming through, and just the reminder that spiritual energy does feel like stress. It's not always like this beautiful, blissful download of like how it is in the new age. That's not really how it is. It can be like that, but that's not really transformative. At a certain point in our development, we can appreciate that kind of thing, good feelings, just the way that it's all kind of love and light. We can appreciate that part of it, but we also need to be honest that that's not always transformative. That can be reassuring, that can be comfortable, that can cause us to give a sigh of relief, but the real change happens in the constant death and rebirth processes that we go through. And so, yeah, I think that's all this. Enjoy the Death Star if you're in it, and have great compassion on yourself and the process. Be sure that you're taking care of your body. Make sure that you're taking care of your body. The faster we can get on board with creating safety in our body, whatever that looks like to you, people, places, situations that feel safe, extra sleep, resetting your energy with like a hot shower, a hot bath. Like, these are some of the things that work for me. Restorative yoga. The faster that we can get on board with kind of creating safety for our body, the more the body is not going to resist this spiritual energy. We're sending a message when we create safety in the body that all is well, even though this intense spiritual energy is coming through. If we just push through and we don't create safety in the body, we don't create regular practices, that's fine too, but it's going to take longer and it's going to be harder. And I know that it's already difficult to go through a death process. And so why not make it a little bit easier on your body so that it doesn't resist as much? Kind of give it a little, give it a little bit of love through some kind of body practices that calm it down. And then the energy can move more freely and you will have less resistance. But if it takes weeks or months and you relate to this message, just have patience and know that that energy will be cleared. Spirit finishes what spirit starts. Spirit finishes what spirit starts. And if there's something that it wants to dissolve in order for you to move forward in some way, it will finish. Spirit will finish what it's doing. You can trust that. And you can trust that God sees your heart. Thank you for watching. Please like and comment, and journey well.